Holy goodness. I am so sorry for everybody waiting. I apologize to all the people that are live right now.
Went off without a hitch. It went off without a hitch, just like it does all the time.
Like I was telling backstage, the brains and the beauty of the operation is in Mexico right now. So you were stuck with me. How you doing tonight, Commander?
Yeah, listen, I'm doing fine, and we've got a really good show tonight. Yeah, we had a little bit of technical difficulty, but that you don't leave stuff with us without Mezzo around. But it's going to be a great show anyway, and I'm looking to see who's here.
Night Vision is here, Raf. I appreciate Cian's Anzabel. And I want to start off really quickly by saying Happy Father's Day today to any of the fathers out there. I know sometimes we work very hard and don't get the recognition. I've always thought about that. I thought it was funny that, Mother's Day falls during the school year. So when kids are like really little, the teachers always have them make like, cards for mom or little vases or treats. But dads, we always fall in the summertime. So we don't get the cool little crafts all the time.
No, we get ripped off. It's even worse for grandfather. I'm a grandfather. All my kids are grown. But we still celebrate it. Did okay.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I do want to say Happy Father's Day to all the dads that are choosing to hang out with us tonight. We have a wonderful show. Don't think that just because Mez is not here that the show will not go on. Nerdy News may get clipped tonight because I'm not finding the link. But I do know that if you want to see that all the information is in the description below. Wow, everybody's chatty in the chats tonight.
Oh yeah, look at all. Let them go. That was your fault for being late. they got friendly amongst themselves.
Well, we love it. That is definitely something that we can encourage here. The Saber community is one that needs to be chatty amongst themselves.
Exactly.
All right, we even got Mike Berger from the Jedi Council in here.
Another old man after my heart. I love Mike.
Hey, and just to let you know too, I'm going to keep reminding everybody every week until we get there. But August 3rd, if you are in Northern California, heck, if you are even on the West Coast, if you're in Nevada, if you're in Idaho, it's worth the trip. We have a free convention. This is KyberCon 4 at the All Funked Up shop in Vacaville, California. It's the Outlet Malls. We have a free convention happening, and I actually have 2 Star Wars celebrities that are confirmed and will be there. We have Daniel Gonzalez, who is Akrev from Jabba's. He was Jabba's drummer on his barge. He will be there, as well as our new Disney favorite, Chris Bartlett, will be there. He does C3PO.
I saw the Chris interview. That was awesome.
Oh, I am awesome. So excited. And we got a chance to talk to him backstage and learn more about him. He's actually from this area. So he's going to come up and do a guest appearance at KyberCon 4. He'll be doing autographs as well as a panel. So if you have any questions you want to ask him live, you will be able to do so. We're going to have hourly giveaways, costume contest, and all of this is going to be for free. All you do,
I get ripped off living on the East Coast. I don't get any of the free booty by being on the West Coast with York.
It's crazy out here. You can literally, when we used to be blessed to have Kevin Hogan that did the con report every week, and every weekend you can literally go to two conventions a weekend, whether it's Renaissance Fair or space and science or horror or comics or whatever you're into, anime. There is a convention for you in California. Transformers, BronyCon.
Yeah, big one for us here in South Carolina is going down the road and looking at the cows. That's there's no cons. If you're into cow tipping, which I'm not, but I guess that might be fun for some people here.
Hey, Danny, what is going on? He's saying, I want all the information on the tablet card. I'm not sure what that may be. All right. And I don't know. Can you see the comments that are happening down at the bottom, Tony?
I can see them on the bottom. I'm in the chat, But if I try to join the chat, I go to another window on this.
Yeah, no. We'll stay in the regular comments. Your
So,
eyes are probably better than mine.
oh
So,
no, they suck. They suck. But if something comes up, you look. I'm going to be 69 in a couple weeks, so my eyes are terrible.
Well, you're doing fantastic for 69. You're doing better for 69 than I am for 51.
All right, I'll take that as a compliment.
So if you see me going like this, it's not because I'm bored, right? It is because I have bifocals and I can read better on the bottom. And yes, I was late tonight because of technical difficulties.
Well, you should be able to read because I'm doing the interview, and you could just sort of sit back and answer questions or break in with good comments if you want, and you can just put your feet up on the table and relax.
All right. Well, we definitely got a great show for you, CalCon. Rafa's saying CalCon, which ironically Vaca is Spanish for cow, so we could do CalCon out here too.
Okay. Yeah, you don't want to do it where I am.
Oh, we could do a joint show. We could do a con happening on the West Coast and the East Coast at the same exact time. That would be so cool. And we could call it CalCon. We
got cows and loose pit bull dogs running around the country. That's our entertainment.
Yeah. Well, if that's all you got, that's all you got.
That's all you got.
Before I do apologize, we are gonna. Oh, one of my light bulbs went out. Oh, weird. We are gonna skip the. That was really bizarre. Okay, well, I guess I'm in the dark much more than
I can see you. I can see you.
I'm here.
Yeah, you're all right. You're not blanked out.
We are going to go to our flow of the show, though. That is a video that I have here. We are very, very fortunate in that every single week we have flow legend James Kaiser. He is a producer on this show, and every week he brings us something different to see. Whether it's gloving, which is lights on your finger, a lot of it's lightsaber tricks. We've had Christian Castro on here many times.
Fantastic.
Yeah, flame. We see a lot of flame arts on here. So, and I think that is what we are going to see tonight. So, with no further ado, I do not remember the name of the artist, but it will be coming right up. Here we go. You know what? I apologize. I'm pausing that because I realized that was the flow for last week. Oh my gosh! And even the intro, like I'm just now realizing. We're gonna redo that intro after we do the flow. But here
you are gonna be in so much trouble with
Mez is gonna kill me. Dude, she has done all this incredible work to set up the show. So I'll even redo the intro after we do the flow. So here we go.
Sure.
Wow.
Okay, that was different, and I really loved it.
That I have
Uh,
none of those skills. I would, especially glass balls like that, I would have broken like 12 of them.
that was totally. I definitely would like to see him again.
That was fantastic. Please give it up for Sensei Strange. You can definitely check him out. His link is in the information below. Before I forget, before we go too far, I want to say what's up, Mez. She says she just got back in from Mexico. She helped build a house today for her family down in Mexico.
Oh,
So
she's
she
awesome.
is
She's
back
awesome.
in the States. She is still on vacation. So she's going to be out for a little while, but she has done a lot of hard work, and we appreciate her tuning in. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that family appreciates the lovely home that you and your church have provided for them. So thank you for doing all that. I hope you
She's
didn't overexert
she's
yourself.
she's an impressive young lady. Certainly, just unbelievable for the show, but just an unbelievable person. I think the world of her.
And if you knew her personally too, it's I don't want to put too many people's other business out there, but it's not anything she hasn't talked about on the show before. But she has her own personal issues that she deals with. She has her own
Yeah,
medical
yeah, yeah,
challenges. So
yeah.
for her to I will say not to give too much away or get into someone's business, but for instance, walking too much is a challenge for her. So I can imagine building a house for somebody.
I don't
You're
know
going
how
to
she
be
did
on
it.
your feet a lot. So,
Yeah,
much love to our girl,
man.
Mess. She does.
Much respect, Mez.
Yes, yes, yes. So, enjoy your vacation time off. I want to re-roll the intro to the show because I think it is much deserved. And then I'll let you do a setup, and then we'll do the intro like we usually do it. So, all right, let me
Right.
redo this
Okay.
because
Okay.
our guest tonight is fantastic, and he deserves no less. Here we go.
Okay.
Now, I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure
Yeah.
we did proper justice to
Yeah. This man deserves that.
He definitely does. I'm excited. It's always fun getting to hear you do the interviews. I feel like you have definitely unique perspectives. Now, typically, what's kind of cool is when we've had you do interviews before, it usually has to do with sabers and saber sports. Usually, you're talking to a school academy leader or something like that. So this is a whole brand new style of interview for you. So
It
I'm
is.
excited
It
to
is.
watch.
I think I brought you a comic book guy one time, but everybody else has been lightsaber related in some fashion or another. So
Right,
this is pretty awesome.
right,
You
right,
want me
right.
to go ahead and introduce the guest?
Yeah, what can you tell us?
Okay, so tonight we have Jeffrey Haskell. Jeffrey Haskell is an award-winning science fiction writer. He's written 3 series. I've been following him from the very first book he wrote, so we're talking about years of writing. Um, and I've gotten to know him a little bit. We talking about lightsabers. Jeff has his own lightsabers. They just came back from Disney, where the lightsaber land was his favorite place. He's in our international group, just like Van and myself. So for those that don't know, we have an international Facebook group that is just for lightsaber instructors and some other people, script writers and things like that. And Jeff is in that group. So it was a no-brainer to recommend him to this audience. If you've never heard of Jeff, if you've never read any of his books, you're going by the time this interview is over, I think you're going to go out and buy the first one.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I am definitely excited to learn more about this. These books looked absolutely fantastic. And I know anybody that you've ever brought us in the past before, you've never brought us anyone that's less than spectacular. So,
Well,
with no
thank you.
further ado, here we go with Mr. Jeffrey Haskell.
Well, after that intro, I want to read my books.
My man, Jeff. We were talking offline. So, first of all, Jeff, happy Father's Day. Tell the audience how many kids you have.
I got 5,
I
so
don't even know how you get a
spread
chance
out
to write
from
books.
20 to 2. So
Wow. And
lots.
you just came back from Disney World, right?
Yeah, we went to Disney in the beginning of May. It was awesome. We spent 5 days in SoCal. Um, 3 of those were at Disneyland. One was at the beach, and one was at SeaWorld.
And like I said before, I'm probably one of your longer term fans. So just excuse me for fanboying out. I'm sure there's going to be people in your group, Haskell's Heroes, that are going to want to hear everything about you. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you questions that I frankly want to know. And I know you've done thousands of podcasts and thousands of interviews.
I don't
Some
know
of
about thousands.
this is going to be old, but you know what? You're in the receiving end, and I'm in the giving end. So we're going to go ahead and start. First of all, tell us a little bit about where you grew up and kind of how you got into writing, and then we're going to go a little bit of depth in writing, and then we'll get into your actual series.
Well, the writing is really interesting. I have been into stories and storytelling my whole life. I when I was a kid, I was raised in a place called in Southeast Alaska, Ketchikan, Alaska.
Wow.
And I always used to joke around that there are 2 things you can do in Alaska. You can drink as a teenager, or you can play D&D. So I played D&D, and I loved storytelling. I've always loved writing, and was never particularly good at it. And so all my efforts to, even after I got out of the army, my efforts to get published, to get into the writing scene and as a writer in some way were all foiled. But the turns out, and I didn't discover this until I was in my 40s, that I'm dyslexic and I have ADHD.
Oh.
And there probably isn't a worse combination to
Not.
have if you want to be a writer. But once I got those things medicated, all the stories that I had been telling my whole life, all the writing I had done, all the short stories and everything I had written, they all kind of came out and were comprehensible at that point. And so it worked out really well. And I started my career, my real career, in my 40s. And
But you had to have done. I mean, you had to have had like been working or doing something when you wrote your first book, which we'll talk about in a little bit, weren't you?
well, no, what happened is that I did tech support for a long time,
Okay.
phone tech support, and I've been working for T-Mobile, and I got sick, and I got something happened to my throat, and I couldn't talk anymore.
Oh wow.
And so I ended up getting laid off, and then eventually fired, and I went back to school to be a MRI tech. And while I was there, the my English teacher was like, well, "You're really good at this," and I'm like, "No, I'm not. No teacher has ever said that to me. They said the opposite about writing." And so, with my wife's wonderful, my wife's constant support and encouragement, I ended up writing for somebody as a ghostwriter, and they bought it. And
Okay.
every time I wrote something, they bought it, and they wrote, they're like, when can you turn in the next thing? And I'd turn that in, and they'd buy it, and eventually she was like, why don't we just cut out the middleman and you could just write your own thing? And so about the time we were pregnant with our 3rd kid, I was like, okay, I'm going to give this a year. If I can make this happen in a year, then I'm going to keep doing it. And so I worked my butt off that year, 5 a.m. every morning, 2,000 words a day, until I finished the book, and I submitted it to. Back at the time, there's this program called Kindle Scout, which was an Amazon program, and you could get. If you submit your book and they liked it, they'd publish you, and they awarded me a publishing contract off my first book.
Well,
So
Amazon has like
start.
created a second golden age for writing. Going
Yeah.
around to publishers has been simply amazing because there's such a plethora of stories now that you would never have heard if you had to go through a regular publishing. But when you did this, I mean, there had to have been, I'm going to say, a drop in your income. I mean, so you said, I'm
Oh
going to
yeah.
do this full time and give it 1 year, but it had to have scared the hell out of you.
Well, we were lucky. You know, I've actually never. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I've never really been afraid of not eating. So, you know, we were living with my wife's parents at the time, which we did for like, I want to say like 15 years. And that was, my wife's Hispanic and her family's Hispanic. And
Okay.
it was absolutely wonderful experience for my kids to grow up with their grandparents. And so they really helped out a lot. And, you know, my mother-in-law is one of my biggest cheerleaders. And so yeah, it was a little nerve-wracking. It was stressful. But when that first royalty check came in, it was I was running around the house screaming because I was getting paid to write, which was something that honestly every teacher I'd ever had told me that would never happen.
I mean, you weren't an instant success. This is the first time I'm hearing this, so this is amazing.
No, I see
you had to go through the struggle and the anxiety and the rest of it.
The side to that is that I was published under a pen name because I knew I wasn't good enough. I knew I wasn't good enough. And I didn't want to publish under my name and have it be wrecked, or conversely have it be really successful and then be stuck in a genre I didn't want to write in because it was urban fantasy.
All right, I got to ask if you don't mind saying, what was the pen
No,
name?
I'm not going to say. You can't get them anymore either. The publishing house went out of business. Amazon shut them down.
So now that you've been writing and you're pretty successful writer, do you have a publisher now? Or do you still do
Yes,
it?
I do. Athon Books is my publisher, and they are absolutely phenomenal. They're out of Texas, and Rhett C. Bruno, who is a New York Times bestselling author himself, and Steve Bollier, who goes by Jamie Castle, also a big-time author. They are both just phenomenal people to publish with, and they do a lot of military sci-fi now. They're probably the biggest military sci-fi publisher in the world at this point, just because because one, they know the genre and they know how to sell it, but two, all the other publishers have kind of gotten out of science fiction. Unless your name is Brandon Sanderson or Andy Weir, you're not really publishing science fiction with Tor or with anybody else. So Bain still does it, but Bain's got David Weber and Larry Correia, who are both amazing people.
Oh yeah. Read both. Yeah, and
and they continue to do sci-fi. But everybody else has gotten out of it, like it's a sinking ship, and it's not. It's not. They're not interested in those stories, and Athon is, and so they publish a lot of military sci-fi. And I was really blessed to be published alongside Rick Partlow, who does the Drop Trooper series, and Craig Martell, and it's just a fantastic audience to be around. Now, Tim, I don't want to take too much credit, but you guys showed a picture of me at Dragon Con with Timothy Zahn. And which you guys all should know who that is, right? Do I need to explain?
Yeah. Well, I think those of us who've been reading science fiction for a while know who that is.
Well, Timothy Zahn created.
Anybody that's watched, I didn't mean to be in the big one. Sorry. Anybody that's watched Ahsoka should hopefully recognize that name drop because she was the one that had the line, the heir to the Empire.
Yeah, right. And Timothy wrote those original books back in the 90s. And he continues to be a best-selling sci-fi author now. And I met him at Dragon Con and convinced him to come over to Athon, and he published a sci-fi thriller with Athon. That was really cool.
Wow, that is pretty awesome.
That picture is really great because it was a great story. He was coming up actually to see me because we had met previously, and he said he'd come by and say hi. Really nice guy. I mean, like you have no idea how nice Timothy Zahn is. And as he's walking up, there just happened to be this girl there who was dressed as Mara Jade, completely by accident. And that was the redhead you saw. And she almost lost her cheese. I mean, she could barely speak. She was trembling, and she was like, it was so adorable to watch. And it turns out she wants to be a writer too. And so I talked to her still, and yeah, it was a really cool. That was a great day with Timothy Zahn.
So I can see you're fanboying on Zahn just like the rest of us are fanboying on you. But you're getting there. You're getting to the same stature. It's just, I mean, you're there. There are going to be people.
I lost an award to him. That's why I was there.
So I got a question about your writing. All right. And really, it's a pet peeve of mine. I've read every one of your books, and they're really straightforward. You got a bad guy, you got a good guy, and then you got the story. But one of the things I really hate, and I'm seeing a lot of it in particularly superhero, is where they get into teens and they're teen superheroes. And I don't know how you feel about it, but this pet peeve is they are too mature for the age that they're at, and it bothers the heck out of me. How do you feel about that?
Well, the average writer is probably in their 30s or 40s. The average reader is in their 30s and 40s. So, of course, if you're writing a teenager and you're 40 years old, you're going to be writing a much more mature version of a teenager than is actually likely. I'm not a huge fan of child superheroes. You know what I mean? Like, there are a few exceptions. Like Tim Drake was one of my favorite Robin. He was the third Robin for Batman, and he was a teenager. But like, you have to come up with like really good reasons why they can do what they can do, because we were all teenagers.
Yeah, and having been a high school teacher for years, when I see a sophomore, they're not in the same kind of mature, I'm going to say, sexual relationships that I'm starting to see in these books. It's like they're taking these teenagers and they're putting them in situations that like a 22-year-old would be doing.
You know, I'm not a fan of that at all. I'm really not. The problem is that you've got writers who want to write about it, but they can't find readers, and so they make their characters younger, and in hopes of attracting a young adult, teen audience. The funny thing is like the irony there is that the vast majority of readers who read young adult are in their 30s and 40s.
That's all true. And sometimes in their late 60s.
Yeah, I went younger with my superheroes, or at least with one of them, just because I felt like that was the sort of the market, and also I wanted her to have sort of like a fresh, less I've been beaten up by life kind of outlook.
Right. But you're like the old-fashioned TV shows where the door gets shut as the mature stuff is happening. You know what I mean? Yeah. You write about
the most racy thing that happens in Arsenal is she kisses her boyfriend for the first time.
Yeah, which is I guess maybe because I'm an old man. So this the same thing with violence. Like, for example, The Boys on TV. Super violent.
You're gonna get me in trouble. Listen,
so I'm going to ask you how you feel.
I have mad respect for the writer of The Boys. Mad respect. I don't know him. I've never met him. But him and Retzi Bruno are friends, my publisher. So if by some strange chance he reads this, I have nothing but respect for his writing ability. I absolutely hate The Boys with a passion. The Boys, The Watchmen, all of those, I hate them. And I'm sorry if it offends you. It doesn't mean you're bad for liking them. It means I don't like them. It doesn't mean they're not good, because they are. It means I don't like them. I don't like them because they take something to me that's supposed to be pure and heroic, and they make it like everything else. If I want to watch a dirty cop show, I'll watch a dirty cop show, because that's all The Boys is. It's a dirty cop show.
I mean, I watch the shows. They're not the top of the game. I watch the shows because a superhero show is better than no superhero show.
It's not a superhero show, though.
Yeah, I'm just.
It's a show with powers.
It's a show with powers.
And if you look at a lot of the vast majority of superhero novels, it's the same thing. They don't want to write about superheroes. They want to write about people with superpowers.
Okay, so let's bring up Marvel and DC and both the comics.
You just want to get me in trouble. That's all there is.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to get you in trouble because
Your Honor, can I treat Tony as a hostile witness, please? Thank you.
Wow, this ain't one of those softball interviews. Tony's going in with the kung fu moves.
Well, wait a minute now. We're going to get to his stuff because I'm setting up the audience for the style of writing and the way he writes, and it matches exactly what he likes as far as popular culture.
Right.
Hey, sorry, audience, for getting too technical there.
I have a question too that you don't have to answer now. Maybe it probably will be more appropriate down the line, but since I'm on here and I try to stay off and leave you the floor for you, I want to know, Jeffrey, your thoughts on. I see a lot of YouTube videos now talking about Generation Alpha and how they're a terror for their teachers in school, and a lot of them are having they don't even have the ability to read at a typical level. I want to know how that affects you, and also does that affect the stories that you might tell, or does that, because your audience, obviously, the older you get, if people aren't reading, the people that you're writing to is a shrinking pool. So do you see this as an issue at all? And again, that can come way later. You guys do you.
Well,
it's a good question.
No, that's a great question. That's a great question.
I homeschool all my kids, so all my kids are readers. I mean, obviously I'm a writer. I'd be a poor parent if I didn't teach my kids to read.
Right.
I hear that all the time. Oh, people aren't reading as much. People aren't reading as much. But I mean, I know lots of writers who are making lots of money. So somebody's reading. Amazon reports $5 billion a year revenue from their book sales, and that only goes up year over year. I mean, somebody is buying these books, and libraries have huge checkout queues. So either the older generation is doubling down and reading more, or but also at the same time, kids in school don't buy books. They don't have Kindle Unlimited. They go to their school library and they check out books, or they go to the public library and they check out books.
That's exactly.
So
I will say I haven't been a high school
teacher.
Yeah, I haven't. First of all, your market's probably higher millennials, maybe some Gen X, and maybe a little bit of Gen Z. But I haven't taught high school. The top third, and I taught in a poor high school, so we had kids from really bad situations. There's a third and that read, and then there's 2/3 that just don't. But that third, if you take it across the country, across thousands and thousands of schools, and that's a pretty big market. That's a big market.
Was that Knight that made that comment? Am I getting that right? Is that Knight? Let's see, Night Vision. I just want to point out that gritty and realism are two separate things. So you can be realistic without being gritty, because believe it or not, everybody in the world is not evil. Just want to point that out real quick. Answer this question.
All right, now back to being in trouble. DC.
Okay, Marvel and DC.
Yeah.
What about
just general comment? You like? You don't like? You like individuals?
I learned to read on Amazing Spider-Man. So when I was a kid, we lived out in the sticks, and I wasn't old enough to go to the school, but I was too old to go to the kindergarten school. So I had this lady would come out to our house when I was like 4 or 5, and she would do my alphabet and stuff like that. And then I'd go in town with my parents, and they'd have the comic racks back in the day. Yeah, and there was Spider-Man there. And I remember the very first issue of Spider-Man I ever read. And it was 1978, and I was 5 years old. And it was the one where he's going to Paris, and at the very last minute, MJ comes to the airport to greet him and kisses him. And that shaped my entire life right there.
I'm with you. I grew up in the 60s. I mean, I was young in the 60s, but it was X-Men, a little bit older. I had a lot of the original stuff, like the original Daredevil. I mean, all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they would have been worth thousands now, and I wouldn't be doing this. I'd be living in.
And I continued to read comics until 2008. I can tell you the day I stopped, just like I can tell you the day I started. And the day I stopped is when Marvel had Mephisto make a deal with Peter Parker to erase his marriage. It was a storyline called One More Day that ruined comics from that point forward.
No.
And all because an editor didn't like the fact that Peter Parker was married. He wanted him to be single. Or he wanted MJ to be single, one or the other, because then they both went on to have a string of failed relationships where they just jumped in the sack with whoever they were with, and it was just stupid.
Yeah.
And their excuse didn't hold water, because their excuse was like, well, the younger people don't want to see a married couple. They want to see a younger Peter Parker. And but then you went on to have them be in failed relationships, which is exactly what older people are in. So, I mean, what was your point?
So they jumped the shark with that one.
Yeah, they reversed it recently, which is good for them. But Marvel Comics, if it were any other business, they would be bankrupt and out of business, and other people would own their properties, just like DC. They are being propped up by a larger mega corporation and being mined for their IP. They're not producing good comic books anymore. They haven't done for a long time.
And you're saying the same thing about DC, correct?
Oh yeah. I mean, they turned Batman into a beta male. They have all this ideology that they're pushing, right or wrong, doesn't really matter. That's the thing about ideology in writing. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. If you're pushing an ideology, you're not pushing a good story. And you can do both, but the focus has to be the good story. And you have a lot of people who are younger writers who don't know how to do that. All they know how to do is push their ideology. And so that's what they push. And then they get worried you don't understand what they're saying. And so then they have to spell it out to you even more. And it used to be that was very rare. You'd see that every once in a while. There was a movie called Quantum of Solace with James Bond.
Mm-hmm. Right,
and
that's right.
They did it in that movie. And I felt like there was a guy on a soapbox in front of the theater telling us about how bad global warming was and how evil oil companies were. And I'm like, dude, okay, we get it. You don't like oil companies. You can let it go now. We understand. You got to focus on story first. Now, you're doing it right when the people who are complaining about your story are from the entire spectrum, right? On the same book, I have gotten reviews that say, oh, Haskell used to be a good author, but then he went all girl boss. And on the same book, Haskell is such a misogynist pig.
I was reading your reviews and research for this, and your early
kids are laughing in
books,
the background from that, by the way.
they were pointing out your writing style and mistakes in the editing and stuff like that. And then you just got better.
Yeah,
and then it went to exactly what you're saying, that too many female characters and the rest. But since
not enough female characters. Too many male characters, not enough male characters. Oh, all the characters are white male Christians. Oh, all the characters are Muslim. I mean, I get all of it.
You can't. Yeah. You got to find that middle line. Bottom line is, if your books are selling, that kind of tells you.
Well, my favorite is someone. My favorite review, and the guy who wrote the reviews listening, I apologize, I'm not calling you out. I just thought it was great. Was he said he wrote this really lengthy, really great review. It was in one of the bigger sci-fi magazines. I forget which one at this point. And he said that this is obviously an analogy for the Russia-Ukraine war. And I thought that was interesting. It was interesting because that war started the year after I wrote the book. So, the thing is the things about wars is they don't really, the quote Fallout, war never changes. The reason for wars don't change. So I wrote an authentic reason for a war when a war started a year later, and everybody thought that's what I was writing about.
Right. I've read your books.
People will craft stories to fit their narratives when it's convenient.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know.
When we talk about the Grimm series, I'll apply some of my military background because I'm going to be
honest. I like writing women. I like writing female characters a lot. Obviously you read Arsenal and Wraith. You know that I work really hard to write those characters authentically and keep them believable as women and as adults and as superheroes and vigilantes. It is not easy to write a character that is not you. It's super easy to write yourself. Like you just first person, you just start writing and you're writing yourself by default. There was a great scene in that show Westworld where the dude is like telling Anthony Hopkins about this like great adventure all these people are going to go on through his theme park, and at the end of the adventure, it's horrible, right? It's like sadistic cannibalism and rape and all this other stuff, and at the end of the thing, Anthony Hopkins is like, "Oh, I think this story says more about you than it does the people playing it." As a writer, that's the thing you have to realize is that what you write says more about you than anything else. And so you've got to really
someday you'll write a character about an old fat man, being a hero. That's
I don't like writing about myself.
So I'm going to go through all your series because a lot of the audience has no clue when you mention the names. And I'm going to start with Full Metal Superhero, which is your first series.
Amelia Lockhart.
Which absolutely love. So if you'll tell the audience what the series about, something about the characters and what's different between them and their lookalikes that are out there in the comic book world, because there's some similarities.
The very first review I got for Arsenal was, if you like Tony Stark, but you don't want him to be a billionaire, a drunken billionaire womanizer, then Arsenal is for you. Because Amelia is a 20-year-old woman, not an alcoholic, not a billionaire. She basically is an engineer. She's got like 6 degrees. And she's, super intelligent, super smart, and lives in a world with superheroes and built her own armor to be a superhero, but not to be a superhero for superhero's sake, but because her parents were kidnapped when she was young and she was trying to find them. And she was convinced that the superhero community had covered it up and knew about it. So that's why she joined a super team.
Right. But there's
so you have the
another
world's smartest
thing about
woman, engineer, building this suit of armor that is so far beyond anything else that the world was capable at the time. Everybody's convinced that she's got a superpower, or that she's like using some kind of ability to control metal or something. But nope, she's just that smart.
Right, but there's something else about her that's different than any
oh
other
yeah,
character.
well, that's not really. Yeah, I always forget about that part. She's in a wheelchair. And she's in the wheelchair throughout the entire series. There's never a point where she's not in the wheelchair. She's that doesn't mean she flies around in the wheelchair. When she's in her armor, she can walk and fly.
Right, which affects everything. It affects
everything.
how
Yeah.
she
She
interacts
gets hurt
with
in the armor, and the armor comes off, and she can't feel her legs, and her legs are hurt. And her doctors get really mad at her about that. And
I want to say we have a host on one of our other shows who is a wheelchair bound gentleman, and I know a lot of times when we do these interviews, that's something that comes up, especially when we have interviews with coaches from lightsaber schools and stuff. He brings up questions about do you work with people in wheelchairs or different disabilities? So I do want to applaud you really quickly. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I do want to applaud you for addressing that community, because recognition does make a difference.
I wrote the book, and I felt like there was something missing from the book. And so I did a lot of research, and I thought, what? She was in this terrible car crash. The chances of her getting out of this car crash unscathed are pretty low. And so I did a bunch of research on, back injuries. I interviewed a couple of people in wheelchairs who had, C5 and C4 back injuries. And I went from there with it. And it turned out to be great. And one of the things that I really like about it is the fact that she doesn't use her abilities, her engineering ability, to cure her legs. And as she often says, I'm an engineer, not a biologist. What am I going to do about nerve endings? So it worked out pretty good.
Yeah, there are some similarities to Tony Stark. She's got a smart
armor.
AI.
Yeah.
Eventually, she does become a billionaire because
bear in mind, in the comics, Jarvis was not an AI. Tony did not have an AI in the comics. That is wholly an invention of the movies. So, and my writing is more informed by comics than it is by the movies. I like the movies. Don't get me wrong. I love the movies, at least up until Endgame. But yeah, the in the comics, he never had an AI. He just had Jarvis and his friends and things like that. But they were all actual people, not AIs. And then the movie came out, and they gave him an AI in the comic book. But yeah, my writing is informed by that.
It's totally different. People would look at it from the outside and go, well, they're kind of the same, but they're not. This character is so much more engaging than Tony Stark. The armor improves over the entire series, but she's surrounded by a host of characters that are as interesting as she is. If you can describe some of the characters that are on, I'm not going to say her team, but they're there, like Domino and Spartan.
Oh yeah, she's got.
I love.
So when the first book, she joins I did something kind of silly. It's an alternate history, right? It's not meant to be like this is in the future or whatever. This is an alternate history of the Earth. It's an alternate history where there's been superpowers since 1903, since Tesla's Wardenclyffe incident. And so when she's looking to join up with the superheroes, she joins the Arizona Diamondbacks, which is not coincidentally named after the baseball team. So it is, so to speak, I use the name because in this alternate history, there's no baseball. So that was the name for the superhero team. And so there's Domino, which is a teleporter, and she does emotions. She controls people's emotions and can read people's emotions. She's empath. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yep.
Major Force, which is your kind of generic strongman, but with a twist. And then you've got Mr. What was this? Gosh, you're making me go in the Wayback Machine. I haven't written Arsenal in a while.
Right.
You got Mr. Perfect, who is a mage. Help me out, kids. Who else is there?
Yeah, so then there's Spartan.
Glacier, who's the ice elemental. The speedster.
Later, though, right?
Yeah, she came later.
Wow, your family knows the characters.
The Asian guy I really liked that was in love with me.
Who's the speedster?
What was his face?
You know how long it's been since I wrote these books? But anyways, but yeah, there's a whole host of characters. There's a guy who comes in and out of the team called the Protector, who wears Spartan armor, and he's super powerful. He's like that world's Superman kind of, but more mysterious because nobody knows how he got his powers or where he comes from, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah,
So
they have this whole team, and they go throughout the books, and they solve crimes and fight super villains. They fight
it's
aliens.
an interesting series because you got aliens, you got magic, you got high technology, you got
Alternate dimensions.
evil organization, you got time travel. I mean, it's all
time
in
travel.
there. You know, you don't have to. I'm not a big comic book fan, but I'm a big reader, and I read every single day. So for me to find books like this, and then the characters develop over time. I thought you did a really good job, and I hope folks will, pick up that first book. It's pretty amazing.
My whole goal with Arsenal was to write like a classic comic book storyline. So of course there's time travel and there's aliens and there's alternate dimensions and all the things you might find in a comic book, especially one from the 70s, 80s, early 90s. Because to me, that was the golden age of comic books. That was the best storytelling. You had Chris Claremont, you had all these great writers writing X-Men and Spider-Man and Avengers, and you just had these amazing storylines. and then, everything happened in the comic industry in the 90s and it fell apart. But at the time, those were some of the best stories. The Siege Perilous, the X-Men story of the Siege Perilous in the 80s. If you're an X-Men fan, you know what I'm talking about. You cried. And I miss those stuff. I miss that stuff. So when I was writing Arsenal and Wraith, I was like, that's what I'm trying to channel right there, was that feeling of the 80s.
So for the Haskell's Heroes, this is really for the group because this came up recently. Are you done with Arsenal?
No,
I read someplace that you were going to put it down for a while.
It is down for a while, but I'm not done with it. And I'm never done with anything I've written because I love all the people that I have created. And I would love to go back to Amelia and write more with her and the team, the Protectors. I love that universe. I love the characters. But I also got to feed my family.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as well as Arsenal did and Wraith, as well as they both did combined, they're nowhere near as successful as Grimm's War. I mean, they're not even the same ballpark. So
it just shows you where
most of that's due to Athon's amazing ability to publish books.
Yeah, you've got to go in where the market is. And we're going to get to Grimm's War because I read a lot of military science fiction, and I've got some favorites. But once again, you hit it out of the park with that series. So let's go to Superhero by Night, which is frankly my favorite person who is sometimes good, sometimes bad. Can you kind of describe her and why you created her and the storyline that she's following?
Well, Madison is an interesting character because I love the Punisher. He's another one of my favorite characters. Frank Castle's the Punisher.
Oh, hold on a second. Let me read what they actually said about that because I thought it was cool. So Wraith is a character described as if the Punisher and Batman had a baby and it was raised by John Wick. That's what I've seen written by it. Yes. Okay, continue.
And if you laughed or you chuckled or you thought that was cool, then you'll like the books, period. And so what I wanted to do with Wraith is when I approach, especially with superheroes, when I approach a character, I think, okay, most writers approach characters with their power set. I approach characters with who they are. And so the power set was something I created while I was writing the character. What I wanted to do was I wanted to create a BA vigilante, no holds barred, Frank Castle without all the guilt and remorse, because you get the Punisher and he's like, oh, I couldn't save my family. And, and I didn't want any of that angsty teenage stuff that you see a lot of times. And so I made her a little bit older. She's almost 30 when the book starts. Her career's over. She was a model and her career's finished. She got her pink slip, so to speak. And she's coming home for the last time when the book opens. And so what I wanted to do was take someone who's unlikely to be a vigilante, someone who wasn't an Army Ranger or an ex-cop or a crazy martial artist, and I wanted to turn them into like the most feared, most violent vigilante possible. And so yeah, so I did that. So she ends up meeting this guy after. I don't want to spoil the opening chapter. I know
Right,
everybody
right. You don't have to talk about
should have read it
the
at this point, but
source of
it is probably
powers
my
or anything
best
like that.
opening chapter, to be honest.
It's
But
amazing.
at one point, she meets a guy who agrees to train her to be a killer, and it just turns out that she's just exceptionally good at it. And there was this graphic novel back in the 80s. I forget what it was called at this point, but it was about World War III breaking out, and there was this character in it, I remember, that was just, he was in the army, and everybody just was like, oh, he's just a mess up. I hope war doesn't break out. And the war breaks out, and he's amazing. Kind of like Autumn Murphy. And that reminded me of Wraith. It's like, you don't think that she's going to be a vigilante killer. She's a model. What is she? And then she becomes a vigilante killer, and she's just really, really good at it.
Without going too much into her power set, think of the Shadow, that pulp from the 1930s.
Who knows what
And
evil lurks in the hearts of men?
exactly,
Shadow knows.
and Wolverine
Yeah.
put together into one character, and you get the Wraith.
Yeah.
And then and with all the rest of it, all the killing, and if I will
in a
say
world
that
where people see, the thing about Punisher is the Punisher only works in a world where people don't have superpowers. You know what I mean? Like, you get like Daredevil, okay, yeah. Spider-Man, okay, yeah. How does the Punisher fight Thor? The Punisher does not fight Thor. This doesn't happen. So I wanted to come up with a way, like, how could the Punisher fight Thor? How could he defeat Thor? And that's sort of Madison. She's got to go up against people who are invulnerable. How do you defeat somebody who's invulnerable? She's got to go up against people who are incorporeal. She's got to go up against people who can mind control. How does she defeat these people with all these crazy superpowers and win? And they're all people who really need to die. That's the key to it as well. Is you're on board with her because the people she's killing are in desperate need of killing. And who they
my God.
are.
I'm trying to think. It was the Crow. So there's a scene in the book right out of the Crow where the Crow comes in and wipes out an entire, room full of people. Yeah, and
you've made your decision. Now let's see you enforce it.
And that's the Wraith, and she's got. Again, I don't want to go give away too much. It's well worth it. My favorite character that you've written by far. You actually did a crossover between the Wraith and Arsenal, and it was a couple of books. Can you explain what made you decide to do that? Because the way you wrote them was amazing and interesting. Because not everybody that was partnered with Arsenal was a big fan of the Wraith.
Well, she's a killer. So when you there was like when you have a superhero team and then you bring in somebody who is wanted for murder, it gets complicated. And basically, they all had to go on Amelia's word that she was okay. But yeah, I did a crossover because that's classic comic book stuff, right? That's classic superhero stuff. You cross over. Spider-Man shows up in Captain America's mag, and Doctor Strange shows up in Spider-Man's mag. That's just how it works. And I really wanted to do that, especially since those characters are so different. You've got Amelia, who is like this wholesome, optimistic, engineer who built her own armor, and she's got weapons for stunning people. And yeah, she's had to kill people in the past, but not by choice. She never set out to do that. And then you've got the Wraith, who's like, the only people I go after are ones who are going to end up in the grave. So, there was a lot of conflict there, a lot of drama between them. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think Amelia understood where Madison was coming from and vice versa. And so they worked really well together as a team.
So, like, the evil characters that Madison go after are like traffickers.
Oh, yeah, human traffickers.
I mean, really,
scum of the earth.
Scum of the earth, traffickers who have werewolves working for them, kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the world that you created, and you go, okay, well, that sounds fantastic, and it is. Every bit of it's fantastic. You hinge on every word that he writes because he's got some amazing fight scenes. And Madison, she's a badass. I mean, I'm hoping you also are not done with the Wraith, to be honest.
Well, I have good news for you there. Raphael, I'm sure it does because there's only so many stories under the sun, but I've never seen that movie. But now I'm going to watch it because I like vigilante movies. I'm working with another writer who is a friend of mine named Greg Lawson, and we're working on another Wraith novel together because I just don't have the time to devote to it. But he's a good writer, and so he's turned in a draft. I gave him notes. He's writing a second draft now. Hoping to have that out by the end of the year, with both of us having worked on it, and it should be good.
Wow. Hey, if Patterson can do it, you can do it. Patterson
Well,
has
I'm
a
not
lot of
quite
writing.
Patterson. I'm only doing this one because I don't like the fact that the series ended on 5. I think it should end on
Right.
6. And
Or
2,
not end at all.
it's really hard to break into writing right now. And my friend really wants to be a writer, and he's good enough that he can be a writer. So this is me trying to give back a little and help somebody else bust into the market. And if I could learn to write faster, probably, honestly, in a couple of years, when my youngest kids are a little bit older, I'll get back to my production schedule I was at before, where I was like pumping out a book every month and a half. But right now, I've got a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, and my production schedule is not that fast.
For those that don't know, Jeff has a couple groups that face him, and he lets us know how he's doing in his writings. I mean, he says, "I'm up to this. I do so many words," and so he's a very approachable an author.
I love talking about this stuff.
I'm just so happy you're on the show. Like I said, I'm fanboying out right now. So just to finish up with Wraith, will we ever see a Wraith and Domino hookup? Domino's a teleporter from Arsenal, and Wraith has some certain powers that are kind of like that. And their battle between the two of them was pretty impressive.
Yeah, Domino is a super spy, right? She's you find out that she's an ex-CIA assassin, and during the course of the books, it's not a big spoiler. I think you find that out in the first or second book. She's a fan favorite. Everybody loves her. And she's one of my favorite characters to write. She's kind of like Black Widow in a lot of ways, but without all the mysterious Russian heritage stuff. Yeah, so it makes sense that her and Madison would not get along. They both have the ability to teleport, though Madison's teleportation has a lot of caveats. They both have increased strength and reflexes and things of that nature. Yeah, maybe. I never want to say never, but I also have overpromised in the past, and I don't want to do that
All
either.
right. Look, you're digging up people to write for you. That would be a great homework assignment for another prospective writer. You're giving that some thought.
All right, we'll do.
Just think about it. Because they're both characters that are well loved. Let's turn to Grimtwar. So you did superheroes, and you did 11 books, 12 books, something like that. 6 with Arsenal and 5 with
14.
the Wraith. And so
9
then
with Arsenal.
9 with Arsenal. That's right. And then you switched off completely, and you went what to military science.
Well, I wanted to write military sci-fi from the beginning. That was my goal coming into the writing business, because that's what I grew up reading. And I'm a huge fan of David Weber, Robert Heinlein, Orson Scott Card. I mean, I read all the military sci-fi I could growing up. And when I was growing up, there was a lot less of it. Now there's tons of military sci-fi.
Yeah, there's a ton. So lots of series.
I love the concept and the idea of soldiers and sailors in the future dealing with warfare and what it means and the technology and all that stuff. And I just love it. And so I wanted to write that from the beginning, but I knew I wasn't good enough. And I didn't want to go into my beloved genre and soil it with my bad writing. So I knew I would be good enough to write superheroes because, and this is not an insult to anybody or the genre, the bar, frankly, is quite lower. There's so few superhero stories that are readable that you don't have to be. People are much more forgiving in the superhero genre than they are in the military sci-fi.
Right. There's a lot of bad superhero stories out there.
And if you like my stuff, there's like this great writer, CC Ikeke, who writes something called the Pantheon series. That's really good. I helped him with that a little bit. And I've never met anybody in my life who knew more about comic books than I did, and he's the guy. I mean, he's so smart. But so I went in from the very beginning. I want to write military sci-fi. I started in 2015 and started writing my urban fantasy to cut my teeth and because you don't know what you don't know. By the time I finished that trilogy, it got published by Kindle Press. And then I started writing short stories for other sci-fi authors in what used to be called Kindle Worlds that doesn't exist anymore. And in that time between me starting and me publishing those Kindle World Stories, the indie military sci-fi market exploded. And by exploded, I mean like hundreds of novels, like the
Hundreds.
Galaxy's Edge guys started that year. Chris Fox started that year. Well, they started because of Chris Fox. Michael Angeli started that year. So just all of a sudden the market was flooded, and there would be no way for me to get a mediocre book to be seen. So I was like, okay, well, I wanted to write superheroes too, and I had this idea for Arsenal, so I'll just do that. Arsenal launched in June of 2017. It was hugely successful for an indie book. I think I sold 600 copies in the first week. And then the book 2, Unstoppable Arsenal, had like it still holds my record for non-published for my indie work pre-orders. I got 480 pre-orders for only being out for a week before it dropped. So
that was me.
And so yeah, so that series became my passion. And I every book I approached every book with, okay, what didn't I like about the last book? How can I do that better? How can I increase my craft? So in between each book, I'd read a book on writing. I would study writing. I would study structure. I'd study story. And then I'd write the next book. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, how did you get better between books? And well, that's how. I was having trouble with emotions. Like when you read books and everybody does this. It's so funny. Like if you handed me a book and said, this book is by a first-time author, I could almost tell you verbatim exactly what's going to happen emotionally with the characters, because everybody makes the same mistakes. And one of the big mistakes is when authors are writing women, they only show 2 emotions: anger and tears. And I wanted to get past that. And the only way to get past that is to read books by romance authors who are the masters of emotions. So I read a bunch of romance books, and I read this great book by Cheryl St. John. I think I got her name wrong. Shoot. Called Emotions and Conflict. And I probably got your name wrong, and I'm so sorry that I did that. But it was really masterful on how to deal with how to write emotions. And because we're writing books, right? We're not writing movies. And so the only thing the reader has to connect with the characters on the page is the emotions. So you can describe visually all the cool things you want to describe. It's not a movie. So you have to connect with how people feel.
Right. Your dialogue has to be spot on.
And I'm the first to admit I'm not the best with dialogue, but I work on it. And so so that's what I did. I worked on it, and then when I got to in 2019, I'd gotten to I think I'd wrapped Arsenal, or I was getting close to wrapping Arsenal, and I met this guy, Steve Bollier, at a con. We ended up playing D&D together in the lobby of the Bellagio in Las Vegas, and which was a lot of fun. And him and Rhett Bruno were there, and Steve's got tattoos of Captain America and Green Lantern and Superman.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, oh, you're a writer, you're a publisher, you must have heard of me. I'm routinely in the top of the best-selling superhero books, routinely. Like if you go at the time back in 2019, if you went to the superheroes on Amazon's list, I was always in the top 10. And like, I'm Jeffrey H. Haskell. That's such a stupid thing to do. And he's like, I don't know who you are. And I'm like, really? And then so we're playing D&D, and I'm the DM, and they're having a good time. And he's like looking at his phone, and all of a sudden I just see on his eyes, like, I'm so sorry, I didn't know who you were. Not like I'm anybody important, but he was a huge superhero fan. And so we became really good friends. He's a great guy. And I pitched him a couple months later. I pitched him a military sci-fi story I had, wildly different than Grimm. Wildly, it was more like Sherlock Holmes in space in the Navy.
Okay.
And then he told me the sad truth about science fiction that I didn't know, and it kind of blew me away. And so when the next con came up in Vegas in that was 2018. We played D&D. In 2019, I pitched it to Rhett, who's the guy who approves everything. And my new idea, right? Because it evolved once he told me that I couldn't. Essentially, this is going to sound really bad. And if you don't understand the business, it's going to sound really bad. But this is just the world we live in, and we don't get to pick the world we live in. We don't get to pick the facts. The facts are the facts. Male narrators outsell female narrators on audiobooks 60 to 1.
Wow.
So if you have a female-led book and you want to make money on it in audiobooks, you're not going to. You're just not. There are plenty of fantastic female narrators. Just like there are plenty of fantastic male narrators. but the male narrators outsell among all demographics, men and women, 60-1. So I went from having like a female main character who's like a Sherlock Holmes kind of character, a little autistic in space, to Jacob Grimm. And so when I reworked the whole idea, pitched it at Rhett, he loved it. Boom, rest is history. It took me 2 years to write a book that should have taken me 6 months, but that was 2020. And we all know how that went.
Everybody had time back in those days.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it was just a little stressful time for everybody. Just a little
Yeah,
bit.
it sure was.
And so yeah, it was pretty interesting. And then it does great on audio, it does great on ebooks, paperbacks, the whole bit. I mean, it is. I think at this point I've sold a couple 100,000 copies of the book series in general. So I'm not complaining. It's a great series.
Well, can you describe Grimm and kind of like the universe that he's got? First of all, no aliens.
No aliens.
No aliens. So don't expect aliens. So
there's no aliens. There's a hint of an alien, but it's so alien that it's like the truest definition of the word alien. And it's a blink and you miss it moment in book 3. So no aliens. The world is very much based and grounded in reality. It is closer to hard sci-fi than it is to soft sci-fi. So it is way more Battlestar Galactica than it is Star Wars. Right? There's no magic powers. There's no lightsabers. There's no ray guns, anything like that. All the science is meticulously researched and done based on as much real science as I possibly. Even the faster than light travel is based on all based on theoretical stuff that actually exists. And so Grimm is a story about a character who is disgraced in the Navy, but refuses to give up. He does not. The Navy is his life. He does not want to quit. The Navy wants him to quit. All his peers want him to quit. His CO wants him to quit. Everybody wants him to quit, and he just won't, because when he was a kid during the last war that they were involved in, his mother died aboard ship in an action, and he is not going to let his disgrace be the last thing that people read about the last name Grimm. And so when they need somebody to command a ship on the rim, and it's a terrible ship in a terrible position with a crew that has just been thrown to the wolves, well, this Grimm guy, we don't care about him. Let's send him out there. And so the tagline for the book is one of my favorites. It's the wrong ship, the wrong crew, the right captain. And it's his one chance to redeem himself. And after everybody's written him off, and that's all he wants is one chance to redeem himself. So that's the story, the plot and all that stuff. That's regardless.
Right. And then there are empires. There's
multiple nations.
There's bad empires, like a German empire, like a World War I kind of era.
Oh yeah, there's like a Kaiser, like the Kaiser kind of empire.
And then the other empire is more like
there's the idea is that parts of space were colonized by different parts of the world, right? So there's like this place called the Consortium, which was colonized by East Asian, Japan, Korea, and then there's parts of the world of the galaxy that were colonized by the Middle East, and then there's parts of the galaxy that were colonized by Europe, and then there's the Terran Republic itself, which was the people of Terra that colonized the area all around Terra. But what we have is the Alliance, and that's what Jacob is. He's a member of the United Systems Alliance. And there are 24 odd planets that are of every single different denomination and creed you could imagine. There's Shinto Japanese. There's, people from Kentucky, basically, which is McGregor's world. There's ultra liberal, ultra conservative. There's just all this different spectrum of people who've all banded together because, by nature of geography, they're in the same section of space. And they're stuck between all these other empires, and they have to do their best. And it just so happens that they also have Jacob T. Grimm. So it works out.
If I could add, when I was in the Navy, I started off as a surface warfare officer. So I was on the bridge of a cruiser back in the early 80s. How did you get so close to realism in both commanding a bridge and the kind of naval officer that I would have loved to have worked for? And I did work for a couple like Grimm. How did you do that? What kind of research did you do? Because you've basically taken our current military, projected it into the future with weapons that are not unfamiliar to, at least to me?
Well, thank you for that, by the way. It's a terrific question. And that's exactly what I was going for. Exactly. I was in the Army. I was in the Navy. And I wanted to write about officers that I wanted to serve with. I had one that was like Grimm. And I wanted to write about someone like that. Because there's so many books you read and you're like, oh, this officer's a piece of junk, or oh, this guy's a coward, or what. I didn't want any of that. I wanted everybody to love all the characters. I wanted them to be sad when they died. I wanted them to come away from the book feeling like better people for having read it. And the only way to do that is to write with hope and optimism and realism. Because once you remove realism, then the characters aren't real, and then none of it matters. And so, going back to like one guy's question of like gritty, he liked gritty and realism. Well, I like realism. I just don't like gritty. And there's nothing wrong with that. Now, are there evil people in the world? Yeah, of course.
Oh,
Are
yeah,
there bad people in the military? Yeah,
oh,
well, of
some bad
course.
things. Yeah.
But I mean, like,
things that
there's plenty
happen
of
in your books.
Yeah, there's plenty of other places you can read about bad people in the military. I mean, you can turn on the TV and watch about bad people in the military. You don't need my books for that. So I did a lot of interviews. I asked a lot of questions, read a lot of books. Sorry, dealing with a cough. I read Audie Murphy's biography. I read The Fighting Sailor. I've read interviews with all the big World War II admirals, Bulldog and
Nimitz, Halsey,
Nimitz and Halsey,
Spruance. Yeah.
Yeah. And I read a lot of fiction about it. Like I read the Lucky Jack books. If you've never read those, they're amazing. They're Master and Commander is the movie that came off of them. So it's a whole book series, 18 books long. People who know that series, I just say it's Lucky Jack in space, and they're like, "Oh, okay." Captain Kirk, obviously, Star Trek's a huge influence on me. Say what you will about Kirk, but he was the commanding officer that people would love to have had.
Right. Strange New Worlds, the Captain Pike right now, he's kind of like Grimm.
I've heard that.
He's the closest. He's closer to Grimm than.
And Discovery was so painful to watch. The first 2 episodes was so incredibly painful. I just can't bring myself to start another series and just have my gut wrenched out like that. So
I've continued to watch it. I agree with you on that. I turned it off for a couple of years, and now I'm rewatching it. I'm in season 2, and I'm liking it.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I'm having a ton of fun with this. We want to we're over on our segment, so if we can do this another 5 to 10 minutes,
okay,
that would be.
I wanted to answer your question, Van. You had a great question earlier. Could you refresh me on what that was?
Was that the one about the kids and Generation Alpha and
right? Yes.
Supposedly not being able to read, and what does that do for you?
That was a terrific question. And the thing is what I tell writers all the time, because I also coach people with writing and I coach people how to become successful writers. Is that's not your audience. The number one thing you need to do, and if anybody listening to this wants to be a writer, you can do it. You absolutely can do it. All right. If I can do it, I have no college education. I have no college degree. If I can do it, you can do it. Okay. But the one thing you have to know is who you're writing for. And it's okay to write for yourself if you're okay with an audience of one. So the audience that you're writing for automatically are people who have money and read books. And that is not anybody under the age of 26. Now, I know there's going to be people in your audience like, well, I'm 24 and I read. I'm great. Awesome. You're not my audience. You'll love my books. But the vast majority of readers are 27 to 60 plus. They have jobs and they read military sci-fi because they were in the military, or they love military movies, or they love military books. And that's my audience. And you have to know that going in. And so I don't worry about Gen Alpha or millennials or Gen Z, even though my kids are all Gen Z, because they're not my audience. My kids do love my books. I'm not their favorite author, sadly.
Yes,
Dakota Crowd is. And I know this because I see how many times they read his books versus how many times they read my books.
Before we go, you got to get your family to come on camera.
Oh, no, that's not going to happen.
But they obviously are supporting you.
They are big fans, and I could not do this without them. The whole trip to Disney was like a big reward over the last 5 years of all the hard work we've all done to make this all work. And so, yeah, it really worked out. And I got a great family, and they're very supportive. My wonderful wife Rebecca does my covers. She has her own business. She carves time for me to do carves time for my covers from her business, because she has a very successful cover business called vividcovers.com. And she does a bunch of covers for Athon Books and other big time sci-fi authors.
You have amazing covers on your book. So,
Yeah, I love them. And if you like the covers, you will like the books. That's how they're designed.
Yeah,
So
much respect to your wife, because they're fantastic covers. Every one of them.
She paints them. Here's if you don't mind me showing. This is
No,
Traditions
not
of
at all.
Courage. So
Oh,
if you can
wow.
make it out. Lights.
That's a new one. So that's what the
You see
spaceships
the
look
shark
like.
on the front of the ship.
Yeah, like a
And
flying tiger.
yeah, this is the USS Interceptor, and exactly like a flying tiger. And the ship is also a character in the book series. So if you like that idea, you'll love it.
We're going to wind up because Ark just gave us the heads up, and I guess he's got some others to do. Pet peeves, things that you want the audience, shout outs, and anything that you want to tell this particular audience. I think we've done a pretty good job of talking about your books and your series, but is there something else that you kind of want to say to the group here? That was brilliant about the writing. I had no idea that you had not gone to upper level school for writing, to be honest, because I've read every one of your books and they're fantastic.
There's nothing a little hard work can't overcome. And I work really hard at this. My big thing is I was 44 when I started this journey. 42, and I'm 50 now. I turned 51 at the end of the month. I wish I could have done it sooner. And that's the number one thing I hear from every single author. I wish I had started sooner. Because we all have this idea that writing is something that somebody else does, that we can't do it. Because there's this mysticism around it. And there's this like, oh, you got to be lucky and you got to know somebody. And that's all just BS. Only thing you have to do to be a successful writer is sit down in front of your computer or your typewriter or your notepad and write. And you write every day.
Which is hard.
It's hard.
It's hard.
Everybody wants to be a writer. No one wants to have written. And it's difficult. But you can do it. And it doesn't matter how old you are.
Right. I mean, how much time do you spend on a sentence? Do you write out a sentence and just keep on going? Or you go, oh, that's not very good.
When I'm writing, I spend 4 to 6 hours a day writing. And I usually write around 2,000 words a day. I rarely, in the drafting process, rarely stop and ponder over sentences. Now, that people have different styles. My wife also writes, and that's what she does. She will work on a sentence until it just sings. She's a better writer than I am. But I do that in editing. Like in editing, I'll go through and I'll redraft stuff, and I'll play with things. But when I'm drafting, I try not to get bogged down in minutia.
It's hard. You do outlines first, so you have an idea where your story is going to go, and then you can build off. Because some people just write straight through without an outline.
And you can. For me, I pantsed. It's called pantsing. I pantsed all the Arsenal and Wraith books. I had an idea. I knew who the characters were. I was going to start writing. The average Arsenal and Wraith book is 60,000 words. The average Grimm book is 120,000 words. Grimm has Arsenal and Wraith are first person. Grimm is third person. There are multiple characters, multiple POVs, multiple storylines happening at the same time. I can't keep all that in my head. I don't have that big of a head. So I outline. And I write from the outline pretty exhaustively these days.
Yeah, and listen, you not only get the naval officers right, I've got to give a big shout out to the Marines that you put on those ships.
My father-in-law was a Marine, and still is in heaven. And one of the things I wanted to do was when he read it, I wanted to make him proud about the Marines I had written. So.
Oh yeah, once a Marine, always a Marine. Doesn't matter whether you're on this planet or someplace else. All right, I'm going to turn this back over. This has been an amazing interview, and I'm sorry if I went so far into depth.
Oh, no, you're great. This is one of my favorite interviews I've done.
Oh, man. Just like I said, I wanted to know about you, so I wrote the questions to inform me more than anybody else. Ark is going ahead and waving at us, saying we did a good job. Someday we got to meet in person.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get out to the East Coast probably next year, so I'll see if I can't make it happen.
Yeah. Come stay with us. We got a big house, and depending on the time of year, we got a swimming pool, and you can stay in one of our guest rooms. So we'd love to have you. Got horses next door. So.
All righty.
All right. Listen, sir, again, much obliged for you coming on. It was just really fun to see you again, fun to talk to you again. I'm going to post this interview in a bunch of places. I think we're going to make some new fans for your books, and they certainly deserve that.
Well, feel free to reach out. You can find my author info on Amazon. It's in the back of all my books. I have a website, jeffreyhaskell.com. My email is the same, jeffreyhaskell@gmail.com or jeffreyhaskell@gmail.com. Find me on Facebook. Reach out, talk to me. I love talking to people. I'm the rare breed of author who's an extrovert. So I go to cons to talk to people because otherwise I'm just stuck in my house all day long. So yeah, come reach out.
That's how I got to know you. I reached out to you on your first book and said, "Hey, I really loved it," and we've been talking ever since.
Yeah, absolutely. Reach out, talk to me. Let me know how you're doing. If you need help, if you want to be a writer, let me know. I'm happy to help.
All right, Ark, it's up. It's with you now. That was outstanding. He's a heck of a guy.
Man, that was amazing. That is amazing work ethic to just get up and go, okay, I'm going to sit down and in the next 6 to 8 hours, I'm going to pound out 2,000 words.
I can't even pound out a text message without going over it over again and making sure and it's never right. It's always a misspelling or I miss a word completely or something like that. So I can't imagine 60,000 words. It just
and to be creative at the same time. It's not like you're just pumping out words that already exist. You have to be creative and be engaging and try to think from your audience perspective. That was absolutely amazing. I can't thank you enough for bringing Jeffrey to us.
No problem. Next week, Karen.
Yes.
So, 7th degree black belt in a Korean art. Been in movies, television. She is a motivational speaker. She's had her own podcast. I hope you all tune in for Karen. She's an incredible, and she's a real badass. I mean, she's not somebody I'd want to mess with. So yeah, I'm kind of hoping. I'm hoping we get her on. It's going to be a great interview.
Excellent. Well, make sure you tune in next week as well. Make sure to check in that show with Karen. I know we are booked out, for the whole rest of this month at least. So we've got some amazing shows for you. Make sure to head over to kybercave.com for any of your combat saber needs. We have a 1-year warranty on all of our sabers. So if anything happens, we take care of it for you. And if you are on the West Coast, don't forget August 3rd, Kyber Cave / All Funked Up is the place that you are going to want to be for KyberCon 4. That is a free event, and we are going to be with David Gonzalez, aka Akrev from Jabba's sail barge, and Chris Bartlett, who is 20 different droids on Disney Plus right now. But of course, Goldie is the one that he is best known for, and everybody loves, of course. So
C-3PO.
August 3rd, yes. August 3rd, make sure to be out here. Tony, amazing job as always. I cannot thank you enough for all your hard work.
Yeah, love doing it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Excellent. All right. As usual, we're going to close out with our talk of the town. Don't forget every Sunday at 7 p.m. And because somebody asked, I don't remember who asked way up earlier, we are roughly 25 people away, 25 subscribers away from giving away. We're giving away a NeoPixel on our next giveaway. It is a milestone for us. We'll be at 2,000 subscribers. So once we hit 2,000 subscribers, we are giving away a NeoPixel of some sort, which will be valued somewhere between $500 and $600.
Looking forward. I have a couple NeoPixels. They're amazing. You can't really fight with them as much, but they're for show. You just can't get any better. We do them at our demonstrations whenever we take them to public events.
You know what I tell people, because I have a shop manager that actually fights with his, and that's one of the controversies we have all the time. I would say, I always tell my customers, I would only use a maximum of 75% power on my swing with the NeoPixel, right?
Right. Well, you can buy a
However,
battle blade now, Ark. There's a company that you can actually buy a battle blade for your NeoPixel.
well, even I know Bendu Armory,
Vendor. Exactly.
they do a lifetime warranty on
Yep.
their blades.
Yep.
However,
I have.
this is what I say, even with the ones that we have. I don't advise swinging over 75% of your power, right? However, I'm not swinging 75% of my power on my friends anyways. If I'm swinging 75%, you're probably somebody I don't like.
That's right. That's right. And be honest, they're not great duelers because they're a little front heavy. They're even
Right.
heavier than regular heavy blades. And you know those blades are $100. Get yourself a Bendu battle blade. He demonstrates it every now and then by slamming it against trees. I've used it successfully. It's just a little heavy for our use at Aiken Saber
Right.
Academy.
Well,
But I love the special effects.
consider you're going from a hollow blade to a blade that now has technology inside of it. A lot of them, the 32-inch, you're going to have 244 individual LEDs in there. So that's going to add some weight to your blade, more typical of an actual sword. If you're used to dueling, if you're used to fighting and sparring, if you're in Lightspeed or any of these other organizations, you're used to the hollow blade, which gives you much more quickness on your swing.
That's right.
So
That's right.
there is a difference in fighting, and it does affect how you fight and your speed and your timing too.
Right.
But again, I don't know anybody that's using the amount of power it would take to destroy that. Just keeping in mind, replacing one blade is 100 to 120, 150, whereas replacing the other blade is a $20 or $30,
That's right.
proposition. So
absolutely.
If
But
you can
still-
afford it, I say do it.
Yep, you get still a free NeoPixel. It just doesn't get any better than that. So
That's right.
pass the word, subscribe.
Only
I'm
25
certainly doing
more.
my share. I'm trying to get him the 25 he needs for that.
Yeah, share this show out. Let all your friends know. The more subscribers we have, the more audience, the more community, the better. And the more sabers we give away. All right. On that note, I'm gonna hit this TikTok. Thank you everybody for tuning in. We appreciate you, and we will see you next Sunday. Don't forget, we got Retro Alcove on Mondays. Saturdays is Saturday morning nerd out, and every Sunday we are here at Saber Rattle. Take it easy, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
All right, no, it was great. He's a good guy, and I got two more in a row to do. I'm
Is
hoping
that
I'm
is that someone that you've met at cons before? I mean, you said you've talked to him before.
literally, I read his first book, contacted him. I don't know how we got talking about lightsabers, but we got talking about lightsabers, and we're not like super close, but we definitely know each other. And I've just seriously enjoyed every book that he's ever written. They're just better. He mentioned an author. Um, I like that author, but he's the
Mhm,
one that does the kid sex too much.
mhm.
It drives me crazy. It drives me crazy. And I love his characters, but sophomores running around, having orgies is not my thing. So
Right, right,
uh,
right, right.
appreciate it. Well, give my best to Mezzo, and I really appreciate it. I do have a question for you. You have staffs, right?
You have what?
Staffs, lightsaber staffs.
Staffs. Not necessarily. We have couplers to create staffs, but we
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
have any dedicated staffs or anything like that.
Just think about it. I'm looking for. I have some custom staffs that were made for us, but they're not fancy. They don't have any bells and whistles. So I'm going to start looking for one. A coupler would be fine. Is it a removable where I can just snap it out like so,
It's an
or do I have to
unscrewable.
screw?
Yeah,
Yeah. So that's what I'm looking for. Somebody had them in there where you can go from a staff to a dual wield. So I
I know.
figured TX.
Ultra Saber, which is VHS compatible, had the quick release staff.
Yeah.
The only complaints that I heard about that, and it just comes down to preference, is because of the way the quick release is. The sabers aren't solid and stagnant; they can turn like that.
Right. Right.
So when
Right. I
you're
wouldn't.
dueling with them,
You.
they're not
Yeah.
solid.
I wouldn't order. I wouldn't order anything from Ultra Saver. So
Right.
even if I could use it somewhere else, I still, between you and me, I wouldn't. I don't think you would either,
Right. Well, no,
judging
no, no.
by.
I definitely
Yeah.
wouldn't because I wouldn't support the company. I
Yeah.
do say that because they are VHS compatible, which means you
Right.
could go to the custom saber shop and buy pieces, anything that you could buy
Right.
at Ultra Saber. They have compatible pieces at custom saber shop,
Right. A
which is a
couple of my
much
students.
better reputable
Yeah, a couple
company.
of my students have some lightsaber. I'll have to ask them where they got it. A coupler would be okay, just as long as like when you couple them together, they're roughly, I don't know, 20 inches, wide, but not any wider than that, 20,
Right,
24,
right.
something like that. But
But
just think about it.
and you're looking
If you
for
have
single
something,
side or double side?
that's what I'm saying, double sided.
Yeah,
I've
okay, double
got,
side. Okay.
yeah, we have a lot of, all our stuff is made by Celtic
Yeah.
Customs. So basically, it's a flashlight in there because they're indestructible.
Right,
Even
right,
when
right.
even when you have to retap them and stuff like that, they just hold up better.
Right.
But we do a lot of choreography at events, and sometimes it's nice to have something that makes a sound if it'll hold up.
Or
I'm
flash
just
or
not.
crash or
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've got a lot of those kinds of sabers. I just don't have any staffs. So, so we just did a big show at a baseball game. And,
uh,
the staffs, when they don't make sounds or flash, it's not as good as when it is. All our stuff is made for competition. But
and
listen, thank you again. Go
we
ahead.
even have, just so you know, talking about that, we have like beginner sabers. We used to call them child sabers, but it intimidated some of the other people, so we call them beginner sabers now. Those are only $60, and they're the 12 colors. They're limited sound fonts, so it's only four different sound fonts, but
Well,
it has the
that's good
flash on
enough.
crash.
That's
It's
good
got all
enough.
the features, and they're only $60 sabers.
So
Um,
if you made a staff, it'd be 120, right?
Right, right, exactly. And then
Right.
we also do bulk discounts too. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
if a few students needed things, you could, get a few orders together and do a
Well,
discount.
send me one, and then just tell me how much, and I'll send you the money for it.
The beginner savers.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
I need the two with the coupler,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah. Well, they come with it. That's the other thing. Some of them come with the free couplers on the beginner sabers
yeah.
too.
Yeah. Limited sound is perfectly okay. You think the sound cards will hold up to a little bit of a pounding?
Oh yeah. And if they don't, we have a 1-year warranty.
Right. I have plenty of blades. We use mid-grade blades, so I don't really need even blades. I'm just gonna put up the blades in them. So from here,
Right. These
um,
come typically with the 2-foot blades. To upgrade, it's like $10 more for the 3-foot. But again, you don't really need blades regardless.
no, I can
And
cut my own, and there's a lot
yeah,
of things I
it's
can do.
it's possible. I'll find out. We may be even able to do a small discount to take the blades off.
Uh,
That makes shipping easier as well, too.
that's what I figured. If we can get it into like a little box with
Right.
a coupler, that would be better than a bigger box with 24 inches of blades. I don't need the blades. I can take what we have and cut them in there.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
all
we
right,
can do a
and then
little
just tell
discount.
tell me, send me a text. Tell me what I have the money right now. So,
All right.
I'm looking to add a couple of lightsaber staffs to what we do. So, listen again. Thank you for the opportunity. It was fun.
Always a pleasure, my friend. I
It was a
appreciate
fun.
you.
Yeah, I appreciate you too, and I'll do anything I can do to help this channel continue to grow.
Ooh, I thank you. Yeah, we're 25 away from the 2,000 mark.
Yeah,
It's taken us
yeah.
the first 2 years. We weren't even really trying, and we were up to 400 and some odd. And then Metz has been on for 2 years, and in that 2 years, we picked up like 1,500 subscribers. So
She's a freaking superstar.
I
I mean,
am very
she,
lucky to have her on the squad.
yeah. I mean, she's beloved by the fans of the show.
Yes.
I mean, she's lovely, and she's just what a great asset to have. I wish there was a way that you guys could make a giant profit. I wish your show would become that popular where you
We're
were
trying to get
making
there, and
money and all that.
that was well, the show started as when we had to close our doors because of COVID. It was a way to stay in touch with our customers, and so I know there's a company out there called Saber Theory right now. They're on YouTube, but he started his YouTube channel and he had a couple million followers. Then he started doing sabers and he just exploded because they feed off of each other. So
Right.
I know once we get a bigger audience, with the right hand will feed the left hand. We're just not there quite yet. And I feel bad because I know, especially with Mez, I know how much work she puts in
Yeah,
behind the
yeah,
scenes.
yeah.
I would like to compensate her more than she
Yeah,
does.
but do you have a regular job outside of the store?
Currently not right now. I did
Yeah,
up
see, I
until
mean,
December.
yeah, you
Yeah.
have to make a living. Yeah, I mean, I call Saber Rattle the official podcast of the lightsaber community. So I'm using the international group to make that designation.
Right.
So feel free to use that. And I'm the admin over there. So I'm the primary guy doing everything. I'm happy to continue to call you the official podcast of the lightsaber sporting community, something
Oh
like that.
man, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, we don't. I mean, it's really true. Everybody that's anybody over there has been on your show. I mean,
Right.
literally. The only people we've missed a couple of the French, maybe. It'd be nice to get a couple of them, but we've been around the world. We've had someone from Ukraine. We've had
Australia, New
Faisal from
Zealand,
England, Australia. Exactly.
Mexico.
Mexico. So you're the man as far as I'm concerned. So let me know what else I can do, but that's how I'm calling you anyway.
Well, thank you, Tony. I do appreciate it. And I like to do a little variety on the show, have
Yeah,
fighters on and then mix it up with actors and then mix it up with
absolutely. Yep.
cosplayers and just
Yep.
it takes a village to make this
Right.
community that we're
Well,
in.
I also call you you're all things nerd.
Right,
So
exactly.
I use both of those depending on where I'm putting an advertisement in. If it's a nerd thing, then it's all things nerd. If
Right,
it's
right,
a
exactly.
fighting group, then it's the official. So I mix it up. Yeah. No, I'm thrilled by everything. I don't watch it every week, but you have so many great guests, and they're so interesting, and so like you said, it's a wide spectrum of people. And now you're at the cons that you're going to, you're starting to run into some people that everybody knows, which is very, very cool.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, it's weird we went into Ontario. We did a con in Ontario, which is like 6.5 hours away from where we live. And it was weird to run into people that are like, "Oh, we follow your channel," and in a town I've never been in before, to have people that actually knew who we were. And we had this one little girl that was freaking out because she was like, "Oh my god, I've never met a real YouTuber before." And I'm just like, "Hey, I'm just lucky anybody watches the show."
Yeah, I think if TikTok is big, if you take segments of somehow and you need an editor to do it for you, and then put little 30-second, 1 minute segments
Yep,
on TikTok, that would be helpful, because that's where all the young people are.
exactly.
And Lightspeed's there now. All the lightsaber sports in France are on TikTok. The Mexican folks sports are there. Lots of nerdy